I watched Nolan Pierce fire me with the same calm expression he used when reviewing fuel cost charts. "We're restructuring the logistics department," he said, leaning back in his glass-walled office like he was announcing a harmless policy update. "We found someone who can bring fresh energy to the operation for about 60% of your current pay. Modern systems, better efficiency. You know how it is." My name is Taryn Blake. I was 47 years old, and I had spent more than half my life proving that hard work only matters when the right people are willing to see it. Nolan had been at Great Lakes Parts Network for less than 2 years. He had a polished degree, expensive shoes, and a talent for turning simple sentences into corporate slogans. Whenever he said words like innovation, automation, or future-ready operations, he smiled as if those words alone could move freight across 5 states. Now he was using that same smile to explain why my 11 years of experience had suddenly become outdated. If you're curious how the man who called me outdated ended up begging his own boss to reach me first, like this video, and tell me where you're listening from. What's the temperature there today? Because before his panic began, I need to clarify this. When I first walked into Great Lakes Parts Network, the place was a disaster. Inventory records didn't match the warehouse floors. Urgent shipments went missing. Suppliers were threatening to cut ties because purchase orders arrived late. Wrong. Or not at all. The manager before me lasted 7 months before leaving a note that said the system was impossible to fix. I took the job because I needed stability. My husband, Eric, was recovering from a slow year in contracting. My daughter, Mara, was applying to universities. My son, Owen, was still young enough to think everything would be fine as long as I came home smiling. So I worked. For months. I stayed until the building lights shut off section by section. I learned every supplier, every fragile component, every seasonal demand pattern, every storage rule that could destroy a shipment if ignored. I built tracking systems, redesigned warehouse zones, repaired vendor relationships, and taught people how to catch problems before they became expensive. It took 3 years before the chaos became quiet. After that, everyone called it easy. Just a quick note, this story is fictional and created with the help of AI to make it more engaging, emotional, and meaningful. My hope is that, beyond the drama, we can feel the lessons together. Nolan Pierce arrived 18 months before he fired me. Transferred from the company's strategy office in Chicago with a resume full of impressive words and absolutely no warehouse dust on his shoes. He was 32, maybe 33. The kind of man who believed a dashboard could explain anything if the colors were arranged professionally enough. From his first week, he talked about optimization like he had invented the concept. He wanted automation reports, predictive models, weekly KPI summaries, and charts that made our division look sleek during executive meetings. He never once asked why certain suppliers needed personal phone calls instead of automated reminders. He never asked why some shipments had to be routed through smaller hubs during winter storms, or why I kept backup inventory in locations that looked inefficient on paper but saved us during real emergencies. He did not want to understand the operation. He wanted to package it every month. He would step into my office and say something like, "Taryn, I need clean numbers for leadership, something that shows our digital progress." Then I would give him the data, explain what it actually meant, and watch him repeat half of it in a meeting as if the insight had come from him. The worst part was how easily he mistook smooth operations for simple operations. When shipments left on time, he called it automation. When suppliers stopped complaining, he called it vendor alignment. When inventory stayed balanced during seasonal spikes, he called it system maturity. He never saw the calls I made before sunrise, the favors I had earned over years, the disasters prevented because I knew which warning signs mattered. To Nolan, I was not the person holding the network together. I was an expensive line on a payroll sheet, $108,000 a year. That was what he saw when he looked at me. Not 11 years of judgment, not relationships, not pattern recognition built from thousands of decisions. Just a salary he thought he could cut and replace with someone younger. cheaper, and easier to impress. Nolan slid a folder across his desk like he was doing me a favor. "Before you leave today, put together a transition document," he said. "Nothing too complicated. Just the key processes, vendor contacts, routing logic, inventory rules. The new hire starts Monday, so we need him ready." I looked at the folder, then back at him. Monday, yes. He's very capable, strong technical background. He should be able to pick it up quickly if you document things clearly. That was when I understood how little Nolan knew. He truly believed 11 years could be compressed into an afternoon. Printed, stapled, and handed to someone who had never stood in a freezing loading bay at 4 a.m. while 3 suppliers, 2 drivers, and 1 furious dealership all waited for a decision. I went back to my office and opened a blank document. At first, I tried to be professional. I listed the primary suppliers, their usual lead times, which account managers answered after hours, and which ones only responded if you copied their regional directors. I wrote down which warehouses could handle temperature-sensitive parts, which locations should never receive oversized brake assemblies, and which seasonal components needed rotation before demand appeared on the reports. Then I started on routing exceptions. That section alone could have filled a binder. There were rules that existed because of storms, driver shortages, supplier habits, state regulations, old mistakes, and patterns nobody would notice until they had been burned by them. Some parts looked identical in the system, but behaved completely differently in the real world. Some vendors promised delivery dates they almost never met. Some customers needed early warnings because one missed shipment could shut down an entire service department. By page 7, I stopped typing. The document was accurate, but useless. It had facts without instincts, names without trust, instructions without judgment. It explained what to do, but not how to know when the situation was about to change. Nolan wanted a manual. What I had built was not a manual. It was memory, pressure, relationships, timing, and experience shaped into a system that only looked simple because I had spent years making sure no one saw the chaos underneath. Guiyu. By 4:30, the warehouse had shifted into that late-day rhythm I knew better than my own heartbeat. Forklifts rolled between zones with steady beeps. Drivers checked manifests near the loading docks. Radios crackled with short updates from receiving, outbound, and inventory control. Somewhere near Bay 6, someone laughed at a joke I could not hear. Everything kept moving. That was the cruel part. The system I had built did not know I had been fired. It still trusted the rules I had written, the zones I had designed, the supplier schedules I had repaired, and the people I had trained. Pallets moved where they were supposed to move. Trucks backed in at the right time. Orders cleared the floor with the quiet confidence of a machine everyone assumed would keep running forever. I shut down my laptop and looked around my office. It was not much. A narrow desk, 2 filing cabinets, shelves crowded with vendor binders, old freight maps, parts catalogs, emergency contact sheets, and handwritten notes from problems solved years ago. 11 years of my life had somehow become a cardboard box. I packed my coffee mug first. It had a faded company logo from a summer picnic where Owen had spilled lemonade on my shoes. Then my warehouse jacket, the one I kept for cold mornings in receiving. A framed picture of Eric, Mara, and Owen at the lake. A stack of sticky notes with reminders that no longer belonged to me. The little jade plant on my windowsill went in last, wrapped carefully in paper towels, because it had survived too many bad seasons to be abandoned now. People knew. Of course they knew. News traveled through a warehouse faster than freight, but most kept their eyes down. A few gave me small nods. One woman from inventory looked like she wanted to say something, then swallowed it and turned back to her screen. I did not blame them. Everyone had bills. Everyone had something to lose. So I carried my box past the moving forklifts, past the humming dock doors, past the perfect operation they thought could replace me, and walked out quietly. If you think Nolan Pierce was right to push me out after 11 years and treat my work like something anyone could replace. Comment fair move. But if you believe firing me that way was cold, careless. Comment no respect. I want to know which side you're on. I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes before going inside. The house looked warm from the driveway, kitchen lights on, curtains half open, the kind of ordinary evening I used to come home to without thinking twice. Eric's truck was parked near the garage, and I could see Mara's backpack dropped beside the hallway table through the front window. Owen's bike leaned against the porch railing like he had abandoned it mid-thought. For a few seconds, I wanted to stay outside and let them keep believing everything was normal. Then I carried the box in. Eric was at the kitchen counter, reading through invoices for a remodeling job. Mara sat at the table with her laptop open, college brochures scattered around her like small promises. Owen was on the floor with his headphones around his neck, sorting through a pile of guitar picks. They all looked up at the same time. Eric noticed the box first, then my face. "Taryn," he said slowly. "What happened?" I set the box on the floor beside the pantry. My hands felt strangely calm. "I got fired today." Nobody moved. The silence in that kitchen felt heavier than anything Nolan had said to me. Mara's eyes went straight to the college brochures. Owen looked down at his guitar picks. Eric closed the invoice folder without finishing the page. Why, he asked. Nolan said they found someone cheaper, someone who could modernize the department. Eric's jaw tightened. After everything you built, I nodded because if I tried to answer, my voice might break. Mara stood first. She came around the table and hugged me so hard, I almost lost my balance. Owen joined next, awkward and quiet, but holding on. Then Eric wrapped his arms around all of us. No one said it would be easy. No one pretended we were not scared. But standing there in the middle of my kitchen, I realized something Nolan had not taken from me. I still had people who knew my worth. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, even though I had nowhere to be. For 11 years, my body had known the schedule before my alarm did. Check overnight shipments, review delayed freight, look at weather across the region, call the early crews if anything looked wrong. That routine had been carved into me so deeply that unemployment did not erase it in one night. Around noon, I remembered my lunch with Victor Hale. Victor was the Senior Vice President of Operations at Great Lakes Parts Network. He oversaw multiple regional centers, hundreds of employees, and more moving parts than Nolan could have understood with 10 dashboards. Victor and I had known each other for 6 years, ever since I found an emergency supplier during a warehouse shutdown and saved the company from losing a major dealership contract. After that, he checked in every few months. Not because he had to, because he respected results. I almost canceled. Then I thought better of it and drove to the restaurant anyway. I was 5 minutes away when my phone rang. Victor's name filled the screen. I let it ring once, then answered. "Taryn, where are you?" His voice was sharp. "The quarterly logistics review starts in 20 minutes. Nolan keeps saying you're unavailable." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm not unavailable," I said. "I was fired yesterday." There was a pause so long, I thought the call had dropped. He did what Nolan terminated me. Said he found someone cheaper who could modernize the department. Victor's voice turned cold. "You're listed as the presenter for supplier performance, inventory rotation, route efficiency, and regional risk reports. No one else has ever presented that analysis." "I know. Did HR process this? I don't know. Nolan told me to pack my things and write transition notes." Victor exhaled once, controlled and angry. "Stay near your phone." He hung up. 30 minutes later, a woman from HR called to confirm exactly what Nolan had said, whether I had received severance papers, and whether anyone had approved the termination. That was when I realized Nolan had not just underestimated me. He had acted alone. 2 hours after the call from HR, Nolan's name appeared on my phone. I stared at it until the ringing almost stopped, then answered without saying hello. "Taryn." His voice was tight, stripped of the smooth confidence he had worn the day before. There's been a misunderstanding. I looked out across the parking lot where I had pulled over after Victor's call. People were walking in and out of the cafe with takeout bags. Living inside a normal Friday afternoon, while my entire career sat in pieces around me. What kind of misunderstanding, I asked. A procedural one, he said quickly. Your termination wasn't properly aligned with executive approval. HR is reviewing it. We need you back Monday morning. The company, he corrected. Operations. The department. What happened to the person with fresh energy? A pause. That situation is being reassessed. I almost laughed, but I did not give him the satisfaction. Nolan cleared his throat. The quarterly logistics review is still scheduled. Victor expects full supplier analysis, regional inventory projections, route efficiency data, and risk mitigation notes. You have access to the historical models. No one else can prepare those reports accurately by Monday. There it was. Not an apology. Not respect. Need. You fired me yesterday. I said, I made a judgment call based on incomplete information. You told me I was outdated. I said the department needed modernization. You said someone could do my job for 60% of my pay. His breathing changed. Taryn, listen. We can discuss compensation. We can discuss title changes, added responsibility, whatever makes sense. But right now, I need you to come back and help stabilize this. For 11 years. I had waited for someone like Nolan to say I mattered. Now he was saying it only because the floor had started shifting under his feet. I'll think about it. I said, Taryn, I need an answer now. No, I said softly. You needed to think yesterday. Then I ended the call. By Monday morning, my phone started ringing before 7. Nolan called first. Then again at 7:15. Then 7:42. I let every call go to voicemail. By mid-morning, the names changed. Supervisors from Toledo, inventory leads from Grand Rapids, receiving clerks from Indianapolis, people I had worked beside for years, all asking questions that sounded small until you understood what happened if they were answered wrong. Taryn, where do we keep the high-torque alternator kits for the northern dealerships? Zone 14. I said when I finally picked up, second climate row, yellow labels, not green. Another call came 20 minutes later. A supplier sent the wrong brake assemblies. Nolan says reject the full shipment. Don't. I said, separate lot B. That portion is correct. Call Denise at the supplier before noon, or they'll close the return window by lunchtime. I knew exactly what was happening. The new hire had been told the job was basic inventory tracking. He lasted 1 day. Someone said he walked out after spending 3 hours searching the wrong warehouse zone for a shipment that had never been stored there in the first place. The collapse was not dramatic at first. It was worse than dramatic. It was steady. Wrong parts shipped to the wrong dealerships. Emergency orders delayed. Temperature-sensitive components left in regular storage. Vendors calling back angry because no one understood the agreements behind the schedules. The operation had not fallen apart because I left. It fell apart because Nolan never understood what was holding it together. 3 weeks later, I walked through the front doors of North Star Vehicle Supply for my third interview. It was smaller than Great Lakes, but not weak, just unfinished. I could see it immediately. The warehouse had potential, but the receiving lanes were too narrow. Inventory was grouped by convenience instead of movement patterns. And supplier communication depended too much on whoever happened to answer the phone that day. The CEO, Marisol Grant, did not pretend otherwise. She met me in the lobby herself, sleeves rolled up, safety glasses resting on top of her head. I want you to see the real operation, she said. Not the polished version. That sentence told me more about her than any interview question could have. For 2 hours, we walked the floor. She asked what I noticed. I told her the truth. The routing system was reactive. Seasonal demand was not being forecast early enough. Some parts needed better storage controls. Their supplier relationships were still young, which meant trust had to be built deliberately, not assumed. Marisol listened without interrupting. At the end, she said, "That's why we want you." The offer came that evening. Director of Logistics, $128,000 a year, performance bonus, and equity participation for the first time in weeks. I did not feel discarded. I felt chosen. I started at North Star 2 weeks later. Marisol did not hand me a laptop and disappear into meetings. She walked me through every department, introduced me to every supervisor, and asked one question that stayed with me. What do you need to build this right? Not fast, not cheap. Right. So I took my time. I studied the products, the routes, the suppliers, the people. I redesigned the warehouse zones around movement instead of habit. I built early warning reports for seasonal demand. I created supplier check-in schedules, trained the receiving team to catch problems before they spread, and documented processes in a way that actually taught judgment, not just steps. Within 4 months, things changed. Shipments left cleaner. Inventory errors dropped. Suppliers stopped treating North Star like a small account and started treating us like a serious partner. Then the calls began. First, Denise from the brake supplier, then Roland from Precision Components, then 2 more vendors I had worked with for years at Great Lakes. They were frustrated with the confusion Nolan had left behind, and they wanted reliability again. I did not chase them. I did not have to. They came because trust follows the person who earned it. By the end of the year, North Star had gained several major supplier agreements, and Marisol promoted me to Regional Logistics Director. I hired a young analyst named Caleb Reed to train under me. He was smart, nervous, and hungry to learn. I taught him the way no one had ever allowed me to be replaced slowly. Honestly, with context, not just what buttons to press, but why decisions mattered. Months later, former employees from Great Lakes reached out. Some had left, some wanted to. They told me my firing changed how they saw the company. If loyalty meant nothing there, they wanted somewhere better. That was when I understood the real lesson. I had not just built logistics systems, I had built a standard. And when Great Lakes failed to honor it, people finally saw the difference between management and leadership. Sometimes, losing the place that refused to value me was the only way to find the place that finally could. This story reminds me that real worth is not erased just because the wrong person overlooks it. The first lesson I learned is that experience has value, even when others call it outdated. The second lesson is that loyalty should never mean accepting disrespect. The third lesson is that systems may look simple only because someone worked hard enough to hide the chaos. The fourth lesson is that true leadership is shown through consistency, responsibility, and how we treat people when no one is watching. The fifth lesson is that being pushed out can become the beginning of something better. What about you? Did this story teach you something for your own life? Share it in the comments, because your perspective might help someone else feel seen. And if this story moved you, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone who needs to remember their own value.
Welcome to Boardroom Revenge Stories, a channel focused on workplace conflict, corporate betrayal, power struggles, and quiet justice. Our stories follow a structured workflow to deliver a consistent, immersive experience. We start by analyzing real discussions on Reddit, Facebook, Quora, and blogs. Next, we craft original scripts using AI tools like ChatGPT. We then use 11 Labs to transform text into high-quality voice and edit everything in CapCut for a smooth, cinematic finish. Thumbnails are designed with Canva, and every video is carefully reviewed before release. These stories go beyond entertainment, revealing how power truly works and how justice quietly unfolds.